Hello and welcome to another episode of the PowerDrift Podcast. Today we're going to talk about what should you do if there is an accident, whether with you or with somebody else. This series always talks about something about automotive, cars, motorcycles, your life with them. And if you haven't seen the series, you really should, because there's some really important information out there that you might be missing out on. To not miss out, it would be a good idea to subscribe to PowerDrift, hit the bell notification icon. And just so we are all on the same page, I am going to leave a link to the playlist of the podcast episodes in the description on this video. Please do take a look. If you're listening to this on one of our audio platforms, please do remember that there are other episodes. I think this is the 16th or the 17th episode of the podcast and you don't want to miss out. So, what happens when there's an accident? Well, the first thing is that the genesis of the idea for this podcast came from a DM that we got, which I also referred to in the road rage episode, where there was a group of friends riding motorcycles. A car guy, I don't know, took umbrage to something that they were doing, got really angry and started driving badly. In the process, hit one of the motorcycles. That guy went off the road. The gentleman who wrote us the DM, he chased this car down for, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 minutes before he realized that the priority should have been to help his friend and not really try and teach the car driver a lesson. Came back and then had to deal with an accident scenario. Now, it's not important what happened to the friend for the purpose of this podcast, but the idea is it is important for you to have a strategy in place when something like this happens, because statistically, if you're going to be out riding motorcycles or driving cars, eventually chances are you will have an accident, and in that situation, having a plan helps. The first part of this plan to me, and the crucial thing which we I think miss out in all traffic education, is basics of first aid. Everybody should know this. Okay, in countries like, for example, Israel, everybody is supposed to do military duty for a few years, and in the process they pick up a lot of skills that are applicable to things like this, like first aid. But you can do this for yourself too. There is an organization called NOLS, N-O-L-S, which is American based. They also have an Indian arm here. The Indian arm constantly runs first aid programs. Their first aid programs are at multiple levels. The more complicated levels deal with outdoors and how people who regularly go outdoors would deal with a serious injury. But the basic programs work very well for people like you and me. They are not expensive. They were able to organize programs specifically for you if a group of you came together and paid the charges required. And I think when Santosh from Motorcycle Travelers Meet organized it, I think I paid 12,000 rupees for a 2 or 3 day program, I forget. But it was a really useful program because it clears your head about what first aid is and what you're required to do. And I would say, if you're a group, a riding group, and all of you ride together on the weekend a lot, to me, it's totally worthwhile as a time investment and a money investment to take one of those riding weekends off, see if the guys can come and run a program for you. There are other people who do this as well. In Bombay, I know St. John's Ambulances run a program like this. And whatever city you're in, I'm sure you can find somebody who will give you the basics of first aid. Even if that doesn't work, there is, of course, enough data on the internet that tells you what to do. And the fun part about learning first aid is that the first thing that they tell you is don't become part of the problem. Now, what that means is very simple. So let's imagine a less drastic scenario where you're riding a motorcycle and you're in a group of friends and somebody in the middle of the group ahead of you slides off the motorcycle. And let's assume that there is no real way that he can get injured, in the sense there's no tree or a wall there that he's about to crash into and break something. He just slides off the motorcycle. Now, the first thing that happens is your eyes go there and chances are your motorcycle also starts to drift. But let's assume that doesn't happen to you. Your first reaction is to park the motorcycle as quickly as possible and run to the aid of your friend, which is obviously the natural reaction. But if you had learned first aid, the first thing they would tell you is that's the time to be calm and stop running. Because if you injure yourself in the process of running to your friend, now your group has to deal with 2 people who are injured. Whether the injuries are minor or major is a secondary consideration there. The second thing is, when you're running like this, maybe you parked your motorcycle in the wrong place and therefore somebody else comes and crashes into your motorcycle, and now you have a second incident to add to yourself. The reason why this is because most first aid guys will have to first learn to classify injuries as how serious could it be in terms of a spinal injury or not, because that is the end all and be all of everything that happens after you identify that process. And what that means is, let's say you were walking down a road and you tripped and fell, chances are you will not have a spinal injury because the mechanism of injury, which is the technical term for it, is not a very severe one. But when you're riding motorcycles, going through space at speed, when you're climbing rocks and falling down 20-30 feet, chances are you have a spinal injury, and as soon as that chance appears, the way you deal with the injury changes. The first change that happens is, if your friend is lying on the ground, do you pick him up or not is a decision that is to be based on whether he has a spinal injury or not. If they have a potential spinal injury and you pick them up, you could aggravate the injury. That's also the reason why the more expensive helmets have emergency release buckles. It's because the mechanism of injury for Small accidents on motorcycles can have a chance of spinal injury, and therefore you want the helmet removed from the rider with the least intrusive and least movement for the spine as possible. So you basically use the emergency cheek pads, pull the cheek pads out, and then the helmet slides off easily so that somebody can cradle the spine, stabilize it while the helmet comes off. So it's crucial that you understand that all motorcycle injuries have to be treated as something with a potential of a spinal injury, and all the decisions you will make after that follow that. The second amazing insight I had in the first aid program is that even if the injury is severe, running to the injury and trying to solve it in a unthought through fashion usually doesn't produce a great result. Okay, so when we were doing simulations in this program, they would be like, okay, this person is injured and they're bleeding out heavily. The first guy who starts running in the simulation will immediately be stopped and say, why are you running? And you will say, oh, he's losing blood. And they would say, yes, but you should be worried about, is he breathing first? Because breathing is a far more time critical event than bleeding out. A big bleeder can still be controlled with a little bit of time and effort. But if somebody has stopped breathing, he's already in far, far more serious trouble. Right? So the first aid program clarifies your idea about how a human being reacts to being injured, whether they are the injured party or the party that is going to help the injured party. In both cases, there is a process that you have to follow, and the first part of the process is don't become part of the problem. So if somebody has crashed in the middle of heavy traffic, your reaction is to try and run into the middle of traffic and protect them, but that basically means you've now created the potential for 2 serious accidents instead of 1. Now, if you are the injured party and you've fallen down in the middle of traffic, you have a big decision to make, which is, do you stay where you are, which is safer for your body, or do you run from there? Because if there's traffic flowing around you, if somebody can't see the fact that you've fallen, they might run over you and aggravate your injury. It's a very difficult decision to theorize upon, but it is a decision that you have to make. If you see MotoGP races where people crash, you'll see that the motorcycle slides off, this guy is sliding through the gravel trap, and at the end they take these really large running steps. If you're in a safe place where traffic is not going to run you over, wait for the movement to stop. Re-establish that all your body parts are moving before you get up is a far safer way to do it than try to be the hero and try to get back up on the 2 feet so that you create a great TikTok video out of it later. And in the process realize maybe, I don't know, that your foot is broken or your toe is broken, and when you stand up suddenly you double over in pain and you're back on the ground. Okay, so 1, don't become part of the problem. 2, if you have the luxury of space, take the space and time to figure out whether you can stand up or not, and whether it is safe for you to stand up or not before you try to jump up on your feet, even in the case of minor injuries. The third thing that I want to present to you is, whenever I've had a motorcycle crash, whatever is hurting, no matter what the doctor says, I will always go and get an X-ray at least done. The doctor is as important as the X-ray, because the doctor is your verification that everything is okay. The X-ray is just in case there is a hairline fracture or something. You won't discover it 2 weeks down the line when the pain doesn't go away. You'll discover it right then, and the treatment can start from that basis. So I will recommend to all of my friends who've even had small crashes, I say, yes, I know you had a small crash. I would say that if it was, say, a forearm that is hurting, just go get an X-ray done. It doesn't cost a lot of money. It doesn't take a lot of time. And if there is no hairline fracture, you haven't really wasted anything. If there is a hairline fracture though, your doctor will immediately be able to change the course of treatment to something that helps you immediately. And I'll give you an example. My mother-in-law had a nagging pain in her toe, and I think took her, she's a stubborn person, and it took her 3 weeks of pain to realize that this pain was not going away. By the time we got to the doctor, that big toe had started to heal from the hairline fracture that it had back then. And it was primarily the fact that she was being obstinate, saying, "Haan, thoda sprain hai, ho jayega." And it didn't actually ho jayega. Eventually, we had to go to the doctor, who realized it was a hairline that was being healed. And we could have just sorted this if she had listened on day 1 and just gotten an X-ray done. Okay. Now, the second part of spinal injury is, if this person has a spinal injury, there's a very specific process of first aid which stabilizes the spine while the rest of the body is evaluated, and that is something that I think you should really learn. It's a very important part of being out there every day and making yourself safe. Now, if you are in a crash, and let's assume that you're alone, the next thing that you have to understand is you have to be able to get your medical information to somebody else, which means that somewhere on your body needs to be a card or a device that tells them who to reach out to and if there are any pre-existing medical conditions that need to be taken care of. Now, usually what most riders do is they stick a sticker on their helmet that says A positive, B positive, whatever, just to exhibit their blood group. Should you really be sticking stickers on your helmet is something that you have to actually consider first, because most helmets can't actually take stickers very well without having some amount of structural damage from the adhesive chemicals reacting with the helmet's shell. So maybe you shouldn't be doing that. So the second thing that most people do is they get what is called an ice band, and in case of emergency band that they wear on your wrist. Now, this is a very nice American idea where the paramedics are trained to look for this kind of information, but in India, most people will unzip your shirt first. So if your medical information is somewhere here rather than here, chances are they'll get to it faster. It's always a good idea to have the emergency contacts on your phone enabled. It is always a good idea to have a card in your wallet that presents basic medical information. But a basic idea for me is to wear dog tags. Dog tags are not expensive. I think the last time I checked, they were 300 or 400 rupees. You get 2 tags. I use one for emergency contacts and one for basic medical information, and they're hanging in my neck. And what that means is, as soon as they zip my jacket, they will see the dog tag, they will see text on it, which human beings immediately want to read. In fact, I can no longer get through airport security without the CISF guy actually wanting to read everything that's written on the tag anymore. That's how curious people are about text, which means when they see it hanging here in the middle of a crash, they will immediately know, okay, this is your blood group, these are your allergies, these are the people who need to be called, and you're basically in a much better position because you invested 400 rupees in a pair of dog tags. Dog tags are not annoying to wear, and honestly, all of those considerations are secondary to the fact that they will protect your life in a crash. The third thing that you realize is a lot of people are worried about riding alone because of bike breakdowns more than accidents, and honestly, that strategy is actually very simple. If your bike breaks down, there's only 2 things you can do. You can find a mechanic in the area who can fix your bike for you, or you have to call a roadside assistance kind of thing or a truck to take your bike away. And honestly, if these are the 2 strategies available, there is no mystery to it anymore. Your very worst case scenario is that you're on the way to somewhere far away like Ladakh, you break down in the middle of nowhere. Even there, if you were to just stay there for 20-30 minutes, eventually somebody will come along and they will help you. The more remote the area is, the more people are willing to help because they understand the nature of the region. Your very worst case scenario is you'll have to walk 10, 15, 30, 20 kilometers to go get help. And I promise you, no matter how fit or unfit you are, most of us can manage a 20-kilometer walk. It's strenuous, but it's not impossible. It's slow, but it works. Okay. Now comes the question of, let's assume that the accident has happened. You've dealt with the accident because you learned first aid, you stabilized the person, and then medical help came and this person's been taken to the hospital. I'm not going to get into the legal and police issues right now because that's outside the ambit of this particular podcast episode. We can deal with it later. If you'd like us to talk about that, please leave us a comment and we'll get to it in a future episode. But let's assume that all of this has happened and the person is in hospital. Hospital protocol is actually a very simple thing because honestly you can't do much. The doctors have to do all the heavy lifting. You're going to be paying the bills, facilitating the paying of these bills, calling the family members in, and then eventually you have to transport this person from wherever area this hospital is in to whatever hospital they're more comfortable getting treated at, or best case scenario, going home to recover. Right? That's when the mind game post accident begins, where you start to worry about, especially with motorcyclists, how do I do this again? With what confidence do I get back on the bike again? Because I just had a major crash. One part of it is your family and one part of it is you. Now, dealing with the family is something that I can't really give you advice upon because each family reacts differently to motorcycle crashes. My family accepts that this is what I choose to do for a living. So every time I have a motorcycle crash, there is the natural concern about what happened and are you okay? But beyond that, when I say, okay, so from day after tomorrow, I'm going to feel good enough to get back on the motorcycle, there's usually no tension around in the house around that. They accept that this is my lifestyle, this is what I've chosen to do. I understand that this is the exception. Most families don't behave like this. And if your family pressures are so high, you might have to give up motorcycling, and I'm sorry to hear it. But if you're a strong person, you can convince them that, look, this is my first crash in 12 years of riding, so actually my record is excellent, and they'll let you get on with your life and get back to motorcycling. That's a way to think about it. The more abrasive way to think about it is, you're an adult. Do you really need your family's permission to go ride a motorcycle again? In any case, I would say don't sneak around behind your family. So your family said, don't ride motorcycles, and you sell your motorcycle and all of that, and now you're busy borrowing your friends' motorcycles and taking them for a spin. That's just a bad idea because eventually either you'll have another crash or they'll discover this from somewhere else, and now you've lied to them, and that's just a bad place to be. So be honest about it. If you're going to ride motorcycles, despite what your family is telling you, deal with it as a rational adult and explain to them that this is really important to you. You understand the risk you're taking and you're willing to take it, and you have to deal with your family at that level. I don't know that there is any parent out there who is not concerned for their child, but I also know that the parents understand that as an adult, you have your own desires and expectations, and stopping you from doing what you love is obviously not something that they want to do. So you have to convince them that their concern is well placed, but the amount of concern is probably misplaced. There are safer ways to do motorcycling. Racetracks are far safer than the street. If that is what it takes, ensure that you do 7-8 track days a year and never ride on the street again. Be in the car, it's fine. Because a racetrack, crashes at the racetrack very rarely escalate to serious problems. There is nothing to crash into. And it's the fact that the streets are full of things to crash into that actually cause the serious injuries. It's the walls, it's the Armco, it's the other cars. All of these, and when you slam into them at speed, is what causes injuries. Most people will, if they're wearing riding gear, will slide off a motorcycle, come to a stop, pick themselves up and carry on. Their egos will be bruised, their bikes will have some amount of abrasion on it, but life goes on. Okay? So getting back on the motorcycle is a big decision also for you inside, apart from the family side of it, where you have to figure out, do you have the confidence to get back on it or not? And maybe that's a great point for you to have a reset, because you've realized that you ran out of skill in some way or the other, and there is an opportunity for you to learn something from it. And every time I've crashed, I've come back to this. What did I contribute to that motorcycle accident? And I'll tell you why this is important, although it is not always perhaps the case that you contributed to the accident, but it's important to think like this. A lot of people have a crash and they come back and say, yeah, I wasn't doing anything and that guy ran into me, so it's his fault, I wasn't even at fault. But basically that means that you've painted yourself out of this picture, which means you have no control over anything that you could have done to prevent this accident, and therefore you will learn nothing from the fact that you just had an accident. You will go through life believing somebody else caused it. But when you start thinking instead, the question is, what did I do to contribute to this accident? Your analysis process changes. Okay, so even if, let's say, I'm standing at a traffic light and somebody comes and rams a car into the back of my motorcycle, I get injured because of it. When I'm lying in bed recovering from those injuries, my reaction will be, what did I do to contribute to this accident? And you'll realize maybe that if you just moved a little bit to the left of the lane, instead of occupying the middle of it, maybe the car would have enough space so that even if it's overshot its braking, it would slot in beside you. It'd be super close to you, it'd be scary for you. You'd probably have a word or two to say to this person. He would probably have a word or two to say back, but in either case, you'd be uninjured. Right? If you went into a corner too hot and then the corner turned out to be too tight and you slid off, and you say that it's the corner's fault, you didn't learn anything about decreasing radius corners and what the strategy is to deal with it. You made a very essential riding mistake, which is to open the throttle before you can see the exit of the corner. You made the mistake and you blamed the corner, which means you didn't realize it was your mistake that caused the crash, and therefore you can't fix it. We constantly see this at the racetrack as well. Students will go into the corner, they will make a mistake, and you can see the shake of the head, and the shake of the head is fine. But what I'd like them to think about at that point is not that they messed up the corner, but I would rather have them think about what they did to get to the position where the corner got messed up. Was it the fact that they left their braking too late? Was it the fact that they turned the motorcycle too late? Did they not get back on the throttle early enough? Did they get back on the throttle too early? Because all of these are fixable actions. But saying I messed up the corner is not specific enough for you to have a strategy to fix it the next time around. Okay, so in sum, this is a short podcast, and what you're basically saying is accidents happen, prepping for the accident is important, and that can be done at multiple levels. One, of course, the basic one, of course, is riding gear. You should never be riding without riding gear because you can't predict when an accident is going to happen. The second thing is learn first aid. It will help you if you're in a crash. It will help somebody else trying to help you if you're in a crash. And if somebody crashes, your friend or somebody unknown to you, you know what to do to actively help them. Okay, first aid programs are awesome. I think they should be essential education for anybody getting a driving license. If you're serious about it, you will also need refreshers. Refreshers take less time, but they sort of reiterate the ideas about the process of offering somebody first aid. And it's a very specific process that starts with, don't become part of the problem, don't run in and try to solve it. Think about what the actual, rational, effective solution is and go and do that. At some point, you will have to obviously call for help, which means an actual doctor or paramedics who will come and take over from you. But there is a crucial amount of time between the person having a crash, between the paramedics arrive, where you do have a very, very active and a very crucial contribution to make this person as safe as possible. That's what the first aid program will give you. They're not expensive, they're a great investment. If you're in a riding group, I would say think about this seriously. Go out, find a first aid program you can subscribe to, and go and do at least one. Ideally in a group so that all of you are responsible for each other with at least the similar amount of knowledge and skill to do this with. Then comes the question of what happens when you're back home and recovering. How do you get back to the motorcycle? You have to figure out your path. A lot of people say getting back on the motorcycle as fast as possible, at least for once, just to get over the idea that I had a crash and therefore there's a big barrier to climb is a great help, and that may not be everybody's solution, but figure out what your solution is, because if you love motorcycling, crashes will happen. They shouldn't end your career. They should be interruptions which force you to rethink. And rethinking what happened in an accident is a very, very important part of the process, because you have to figure out what you did to contribute to that accident, and therefore you should be able to figure out a way to not do that thing again, whatever it was. If you go through life blaming other people for all the motorcycle crashes you had, I promise you, you will continue to have motorcycle crashes. You will continue to think it is somebody else's fault, and you will never be able to figure out why you have friends who never seem to crash a motorcycle. You constantly do. They have a great time. You're constantly in bed recovering from something or the other, and you can't figure out what's going on. The final idea that I want to leave you with is to just accept the fact that if you're riding motorcycles, you're going to fall off the motorcycle. If you fall off the motorcycle, chances are going to get hurt. The real world picture is the spectrum of minor injury, major injury, getting maimed, losing a limb, or dying are all very real outcomes of motorcycling. But motorcycling is a very exciting sport, and which is why we love doing it so much. But if you love doing it so much, invest the time and the effort required to make your safety as high as possible. That's riding gear, first aid programs, skill programs. Go to school, figure out how a motorcycle is actually ridden. I'm not going to boast about it, but it's true. We've had riders come to us who have 12, 14, 15 years of motorcycling under their belt. So you'd think they're senior experienced riders. But all of their knowledge is built on the experience rather than the rational idea about how motorcycles are ridden. Where do you need to look at what time to see the world in the best possible light for motorcycling is an idea that they've never actually explored until they came to school. And I promise you, after 15 years of riding motorcycles, safely or unsafely, doesn't matter. After 15 years, 2 days at school will completely change your idea about how a motorcycle is operated. And it's not a physical skill, it's a completely mental skill, and it can be learned. So, this was our episode on accidents and how to deal with them. If you find this useful, please do like it. I do urge you to please share this with your friends, because I think this is some information that you should all be having. Because when you're on a group ride, most people don't realize group rides mean you are responsible for everybody in the group if something should happen to them, and everybody in the group is responsible for you if something should happen to you. So it's really important that all groups gel together in this way and they take the mutual responsibility required to do this well. Thank you so much for watching. Accidents do happen. Take precautions and be safe. This is the PowerDrift Podcast. If you like this, as I said, do share with your friends. Do subscribe to PowerDrift and hit the bell notification icon so that when the next podcast goes out, you are automatically informed. We are leaving a link to the playlist with all the previous podcast episodes in the description of this video. Please do go check it out. There's a lot of episodes. Not all of them are very long, but they all have important information you could use to make your experience of motorcycling better. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Shumi. If there is a specific topic you'd like us to discuss on the podcast, please do leave us a comment. We'll get to it as soon as we can. Thank you.